Looks like we're getting a lot of participants joining us. Signing on now. Wonderful. Wonderful. Hi, everybody. My name is Annabeth Gorman. I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Foundation of Arkansas. It is 5 o'clock Wednesday, and we are going to be starting very soon. The Women's Foundation of Arkansas, for those of you who aren't familiar with us, we are the only statewide foundation that exists in Arkansas that focuses on women and girls specifically. And our area of interest is women's economic security. So today we're going to be joined by two incredible women who are doing a lot of behind the scenes work right now, helping women entrepreneurs. And many of you received this invitation because the Women's Foundation of Arkansas, we launched over 2.5 weeks ago our Women-Owned Grant Assistance Fund. And what's happening with all of our businesses right now in light of the pandemic, we really wanted to do something to support small women-owned companies here in Arkansas. And so we were able to launch that grant assistance fund. And we were able, in our first round of funding, to grant to 10 women business owners. However, we had almost 700 women apply. And so we know that the need is great. And we wanted to kick off this webinar series really talking to women business owners about other things that they can do to help them be prepared for future funding opportunities. And with all the things that are happening right now and money coming from the federal government and opportunities coming from our state government, it's really hard to navigate. So we're being joined today by women who know what they're talking about. And I'm going to turn it over to them. I'm going to introduce first Meredith Lowry. I'm an attorney with Wright Lindsay Jennings. And also Sydney Ledger, another attorney with Wright Lindsay Jennings. And both of their backgrounds are perfect for what we're talking about this evening. Meredith does a lot of copyright law for businesses. And so she talks to them about protecting their companies. She talks to them about how they should be organized. Sydney is all things tax. And together, this dynamic duo has spearheaded an initiative called Women Run, a project of their firm. It's a statewide project to help women-owned businesses here in Arkansas. And we're collaborating because the Women's Foundation of Arkansas and Women Run, project of Wright Lindsay Jennings, we believe in the value of women-owned businesses, and we want to help you. We want to provide resources. Both of our websites are right now curating opportunities for you to help navigate the financial crisis that's happening. We're hopeful that in a few short weeks, we'll be able to launch the second round of our grant assistance fund. But in the meantime, what we can do is offer this information this evening about how to get your business ready for some of the federal programs that are being offered. And we can also talk about other things that are happening and other resources. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat bar, and Ryder Buttry, who is my colleague, who's also on the phone this evening, she's going to be looking at those questions and sharing them with our two presenters. Again, we thank you very much for making time tonight. I know that all of your time is very valuable. You're not just a business owner, you're a wife, you're a mom, you're a daughter, so you've got other obligations. So we appreciate you making time to be with us this evening. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Meredith. Thank you, Meredith.
Thank you. So we're actually going to start with Sydney, because this is a presentation that we've collaborated on, but we'll jump back and forth between the sections. So Sydney.
All right. So we want to talk about getting your business ready generally. But one thing that we're going to talk about first, and kind of put this in the context of the Paycheck Protection Program, which is a federal relief program. This was passed with the CARES Act, and was able, through the CARES Act, they were allocated $349 billion for loans for small businesses. And the main draw to this program is that 100% of the loan can be forgiven. So it really acts like a grant. So you would apply for a loan. These these loans are available through lenders. Lenders are really going to be the gatekeepers on this, but it is a true loan application where later you file for forgiveness, and we'll talk about that and how you can get your funds forgiven. As another part of the CARE Act was an EIDL loan. That's an economic injury disaster loan. There's part of that that works like a grant, but it truly acts more like a loan. There are not forgiveness provisions with that, and the interest rate on that is a little bit higher. So that's why we're going to focus on the PPP loans. The initial PPP loans went live on April 3rd. It only took 2 weeks to spend $349 billion, which is astounding. But the government has kind of refilled the cup and allocated another $310 billion to the PPP. And that went live on Monday. So that is going right now. That is something that you can seek. And we'll talk about that and how to know if you're eligible and if it's a good fit for you, and what you should talk to your lender about. Very clear to the next. Okay. So, like I said, the lenders are really going to be the gatekeepers here. We have been working with clients on this. Our firm worked directly on this for our firm. We sought a loan like this as well, but I've been answering a lot of questions for clients, and it seems like people are having a lot of success with small banks, community banks, where you can, get a hold of somebody. Sometimes with some of the larger banks, people are experiencing problems getting in touch with a banker and knowing who they're working with. And we've seen smaller banks be able to push these loans through quickly. But if you have a lender that you already work with, that's wonderful. If you don't, lenders want to help you. I've been talking to some banker friends, and they are so excited about this and want to help new clients, existing clients. They want you to be successful. And that's really how we feel as well. Our business and our success depends on your business and your success. So we want you to be successful. And I know that the bankers feel the same way and are really excited to work with you on this loan project and getting your application together and getting everything done. So who is eligible for PPP loans? Small businesses, 501c3 entities. Typically, you have to be under 500 employees. There are some exceptions. The SBA is the Small Business Administration, is the governmental arm that is administering this. And they've got some special rules for certain industries. So if you are towing that 500 employee line, that might be something that you want to look into to see if you can still apply. And they also have eligibility for self-employed individuals and independent contractors who receive a 1099. This is based on payroll cost calculations. And so if you aren't paying people, I've talked to some people who have businesses where there's maybe an operating company and then a management company, and no one in the operating company no one is paid by the operating company, it's all of the management company. In a situation like that, it's going to be the management company that wants to take this PPP loan because it's all based on payroll. Now, for individuals who are maybe set up as an LLC, or maybe you're self-employed, they also will calculate that based on your net profit. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But just because you don't make payroll payment to yourself doesn't mean that you can't apply. They initially kind of had that in there as I think a glitch, just a mistake when they were drafting, but they have fixed that, and now those individuals can also apply looking at their net profit. So documents that you'll need to apply, you will need, um, it's going to be based on what your bank wants you to have, but you know that you will need organizational documents. If you are set up as an entity, they are going to want to see your articles of incorporation or your articles of organization, and they'll want to see your governing documents. So bylaws, if you're a corp, an operating agreement if you're an LLC, or a partnership agreement if you're set up as a true partnership. And if you have any other documents, any other governing documents like the shareholders agreement, it would probably be wise to get that and have that in hand as well. They're also looking at payroll cost calculations because that is how the loan amount is determined. And those are based on a trailing 12-month period. So looking at the monthly average for the last 12 months. And if you work with an accountant, I've heard some banks are giving priority, I guess, to people who apply with a letter from their accountant. Accountants do not want to be on the hook for these calculations because even if they help you with them, they don't want to certify it the way that they would certify an audit. But banks are sometimes giving priority to those people who are working with an accountant because they don't have, I guess, as much liability with knowing that their payroll cost calculations are correct. So that can sometimes accelerate the process, but it's not necessary. You can still seek one of these loans without working with an accountant. It just might not move as quickly.
So, as Sydney mentioned, solo entrepreneurs can now apply, and there are the PPP money will go to them. But as we saw early on with the PPP application process, corporations and LLCs that had documents that Sydney was mentioning were given priority and somewhat sent to the front of the line for funding. It was easier for those businesses to get funding faster because they had those documents. With Woman Run, one of the things that we do a lot is research. Some of that research is from the Women's Foundation of Arkansas, and some of it's brought in from other organizations that deal with women businesses. We know that women typically do not form businesses when they have a side hustle, or if they start a business from their home that is very needed for their family, but they don't want to go through all the formalities because they don't feel like there's a need. Now there's a need. And we've seen that happen a lot through this process where people did not have the paperwork that the banks really wanted to see. So we're going to look at some slides and do sort of a basic of what you would want to do if you did not want to seek an attorney to do this process. I mean, obviously, we would want you to seek an attorney and seek us because we want to help you with your business. But we also know that with a small business, every penny counts. And sometimes you do not want to spend that on an attorney. I will tell you also that attorneys probably are cheaper than what most people think that they are, especially for formation purposes. But we're going to go through this just so you're familiar with what the process is. The Women's Foundation is going to provide these slides to you later. So all of the documents will be there for you again to look at to make sure that you have some familiarity and also you've got the right links. So to have a basic formation of a business, I would recommend an LLC. Everyone debates what's maybe I should do a corporation or maybe I should do an LLC. But from the basic formation that you can do on your own, forming an LLC is doable. A corporation is going to have other issues that are more than a self-help person can handle. So forming an LLC would be where I would want to start. The Arkansas Secretary of State's website will help you.
Meredith, can
Yeah.
you jump in just a second? An
Yes.
LLC is also a lot easier to maintain.
Yes.
Corporations require a lot more record keeping, and they require annual meetings. They require meetings of the shareholders, meeting of the board of directors. Even if it's just you, you still have to document that. So an LLC is a lot easier.
And the bank would expect you to bring in all of those documents as well. With the LLC, you're going to have a lot more leeway there. A lot of people ask me about starting a business through LegalZoom. LegalZoom will take your money and then also file it through the Secretary of State's website, just like you could do right now on your own without paying LegalZoom. You're just going to pay straight to the Secretary of State's website. The website is a little confusing, mainly because it shows you some things over and over again. You'll see that here in a minute. But this is what you would be looking at, business and commercial services. And you can see on the screen that there's an LLC that's a hyperlink, and you would click on it to then go on to the next screen. And it's going to show you what you can file online. And you're going to want to file the articles of organization for a domestic limited liability company. You can see they're asking you for $35. That is a $5 fee or something like that for filing it online. It's kind of hidden in there. It's a processing charge, but it's cheaper than LegalZoom. You can do that on your own, and I'm going to show you the process of what you're going to see. So it's going to seem a little bit more easy. And in the future, for the next round, because we are hearing that there's probably going to be a third round of PPP, you could be prepped for that. So again, it's repetitive. When you click that here of online form, it brings you back to this, which is again a listing of forms. But the main difference is there's this start form box that is now there for you to click to start the article organization form. So when it comes to this, the first confusing part is the filing act to pick. Again, I'm a copyright attorney. I do basic formation and work with a lot of women in business, but Sydney is the one that knows all the differences between the Select Filing Act. She'll correct me when I say this probably, but there's not a lot of differences. I usually pick the one that's offered and know those rules. Sydney, do you pick a different one?
No, the one that it defaults to is the one that I would choose and recommend.
Yeah. So that's the first mystery solved in this form that you can do. The rest of it's pretty easy. They're going to ask you your company name, and they're not going to give you an LLC if there's another company name that's already out there like that. There's a hyperlink for you to search for similar names. And here's the thing, if the Secretary of State comes back and says, you want ABC LLC, and there's an ABD LLC, we have a problem with that, they're going to let you change the name. They will refund you your money until you get the one right. So there's not a lot of risk there, except for just taking a little bit longer. They're going to ask you if the management of the company is the managers or the members. If it's just you by yourself, you can make yourself a manager. And you can say your manager managed. If it's just you by yourself, which this is what I would be recommending for most people. I mean, I have a business, and granted, it's my husband and we're manager managed. That's what I would do. But if it's by yourself, it's also, you could do member managed. You can also not put anything in that box, and it's perfectly fine as well. The big things that they're going to want to know are the company name and your name and information right in those forms. So you'll put your name and the principal information. The next thing they're going to ask you is a registered agent. If you don't want to pay someone to be your agent, again, it's you and your home address. And that's perfectly legitimate until you have enough money or your business is making so much that you're okay with hiring someone for an agent. The agent purpose is just that if someone needs to sue you, which hopefully will never happen, or contact you, that's the address, that's the person that they're going to contact. So most of the time it's going to be you there. Officers, you would try to remember, Sydney, you don't have to put anyone other than the organizer, right? Correct. Okay. So again, it's you right there in that box. And then, so the information becomes very repetitive right here. Submitter contact information. Again, your information. The annual report is the thing that throws a lot of people. For all LLCs, there is a franchise fee due May 1st. Granted, right now it's been postponed until I think July 1st. Don't quote me on that. Sydney would know better. But normally, in a normal world, we're going to have a May 1st deadline. So every January, the Secretary of State's office will mail cards and email the person that's information is in this box. They will give you multiple alerts to make sure you pay your franchise fee tax. If you don't update it, then that's going to be a problem and you're not going to get that alert. But that you want to make sure you keep paying that. It's $150 every year, but it's one of those things that's peace of mind knowing, okay, I've got this business formed that is going to serve a purpose, that if I need to apply for money, I can have that potential business documentation to take to the bank, or another rationale for having it. It also protects you, your house, your personal assets from risk if you were sued. And then you sign it. That's it, pretty much. Yeah, you sign it, you submit it. And then they take your credit card information and it goes off to the Secretary of State's office. They will usually send an email within seconds that they've gotten it. And then within an hour to a day, usually they'll tell you that it's been accepted and they'll send you the articles of organization. Sydney mentioned that you need an operating account or operating agreement. That is something I would ask an attorney to do. You can find some online. I wouldn't recommend it because they don't always go together well. But if you're going to have to spend any money, you can already walk in and say, hey, I've got the articles done, but I need the operating agreement, and it's going to save you money that way. With employees, the next step, if you're going to have employees or pay yourself as an employee from your LLC, the thing you're going to need is an EIN. The employer identification number is available from the IRS online. There are sites that look like the IRS. They are not always accurate. So that's why we've given you more screenshots of the IRS portal and going through it, and also the URL for accessing it. I will say that this one will probably change more often than the Secretary of State's portal will change, but this is what it looks like, and it will always say an official website of the United States government. If it does not say that, then there's a risk there. The reason that this is sometimes cloned is because you're going to put in your social security number, and people want that. So you start this process of determining, okay, are you really needing an EIN? If you've set up a new LLC and you're going to have employees that are going to be paid through the LLC, you need an EIN. It's again going to ask you, why do you need this? Government is repetitive. I'm sorry for that. You can read through all of it, but for the most part, we're just going to skip right through to begin the application, which again is more repetitive information. But that when we click continue, I mean, it's a simple process. How many members do you have?
Members,
Yeah.
members in an LLC are the owners of the LLC.
Yes.
That's something that I didn't know before law school. I didn't know that there's different words for different entity types. So everyone is familiar with the term like a shareholder, and corporations have shareholders, and those are the people who own the corporation. And you divide that up, whatever percentages, and that's your stock. For an LLC has members. And you might hear the like units of membership, what your ownership interest in the LLC referred to as units or membership units. So those work as far as like thinking of how much you own, very similar to how much stock you own in the company. So you're looking at your ownership percentage, and then those owners are called a member. Just so we don't get lost in the nomenclature.
Yeah.
A lot of people weren't familiar.
It is easy to, which is one reason why this is a confusing thing and why people don't want to do it. So we want to demystify that. For this, I mean, it's putting in how many members. If it's a dual member LLC, it's going, or multiple member LLC, it's going to do something different. At that point, if there's multiple of you, I think that's one time when you might want to have an accountant get the EIN for you. But
Or an attorney.
Or an attorney, because that can be more complicated with the tax aspect of it. For a single member, when it talks about disregarded entity, what it essentially is meaning is that all the money that the LLC makes goes straight through to you. There's other ways to deal with it. Sydney knows all those ways, but that's a complicated thing when it comes to, and you'll want an accountant or an attorney helping you with that process. For the basic aspect of getting an LLC and then being able to pay employees, we're going to skip that, and you can do that later. They're going to ask you, why are you asking for the EIN? You can ask for an EIN for an existing LLC that's never had employees. In this instance, I went with started a new business. They're going to ask you your information to move forward. They ask your social security number. They're going to ask you why, who is this that's giving the information? So again, you fill out that information, and they're going to ask where you're at. Some of this is statistics. They want to know where businesses are being formed, and this is the federal government's way of dealing with that aspect. They want to know information about the business. I've never had a business have to say yes to any of this. I don't know what would happen if they did. For the most part, most we're going to go with most of y'all are not selling or manufacturing alcohol, tobacco, or firearms. So we're going to keep going. But again, they're asking for detailed information about your business. These are normal things that the IRS is going to ask for. They're not really supposed to be confusing. They just look confusing from the outset. And you, even with this one, I mean, I was going through it with the concept of, okay, I want to start a law firm. And so I'm going to have an LLC with a law firm. That is not one of the options, oddly. And when I picked other, they kept asking more and more questions about it. It doesn't affect the process really. It's just going to go through. And once you've answered all of their questions, they don't, to some extent, they don't care that I'm going to have to go through 5 more questions of what does your organization do to finally get to law firm. They're still going to give me an EIN at the end of it. And if they don't, they'll provide you with a contact information for that purpose. So the next issue with the documents for the bank are bookkeeping documents. A lot of people do not want to keep but bookkeeping records, that they're busy with their business. They also don't want to pay for an accountant to do it. This is actually the bookkeeping system that we use for our small business that my husband runs. It works. I mean, I think it goes straight to his phone. It can print off all the records. It's something that he can then provide to our accountant when we do things for tax purposes. But it's fairly easy. There are other systems out there. This is obviously paying per month. You can also use QuickBooks. There's systems out there that you don't need an accountant to be doing your bookkeeping to provide you the right information or right materials. So move back to Sydney for this part.
Okay. So we've talked about the bank needs to see your payroll costs in order to calculate your loan amount. That is how the government has asked that these loan amounts be calculated. So it's based on payroll costs, but that includes a lot of things, more than just wages. So it looks at salary and wages, tips, commissions. We've had people ask about bonuses. It doesn't specifically say bonuses, but we think it's definitely included. And that is going to be capped at $100,000 per employee. So if you have an employee who makes $40,000 a year, an employee who makes $60,000 a year, and an employee that makes $120,000 a year, that $120,000 employee, their compensation is going to be capped at $100,000. So that would be a total of $200,000 for your 3 employees. For self-employed individuals, maybe you're not taking a straight up paycheck out of the business. You can still use the net profits that you make as a payroll cost. So that's something that we had a lot of questions about at the beginning. The government issued some guidance on that, and they want you to use the net profits that you enter on Schedule C of your individual tax return, line 31, and they want you to cap that at $100,000. So basically treating your profits that you would distribute out to yourself, treating that like your paycheck, because for a lot of people, that is how that works. They also include vacation pay, parental leave, family leave, medical leave, sick leave. There is a caveat there. There's special sick leave right now and family leave under the Family First Act, which is another coronavirus statute that was passed. And there's some tax credits that you can get with that. And so if you're getting those tax credits, they're not going to let you include that sick leave. It's going to be double dipping to give you total credit under your payroll taxes for that, and then also allow you to borrow money to pay that then is going to be forgiven. You would really be getting 2 times the benefit. You don't want to do that. They allow for severance pay, group health care costs, including insurance premiums. So health, dental, vision, your premiums on that are going to be included as a payroll cost. Any retirement benefits, 401k contributions that you make on behalf of your employees are going to qualify as a payroll cost. And then any state or local taxes assessed on employee compensation. One thing that is excluded is federal payroll tax. And that is kind of I understand, I guess, why they do that, since it would be just coming back to them. But that is a little sticky from an accounting perspective. A lot of people don't necessarily have all those things separated out. And so it's an extra step in your accounting to separate that out from your payroll costs. But ultimately, this is free money, so I think it's worth the extra effort to do that extra math and figure out what your payroll costs are. So
Sorry.
No, next slide. You're good. So the payroll cost is going to be your first step. So you need to figure that out for the past 12 months and then get an average for that. And then you can borrow up to 2.5 times that amount, not to exceed $10 million. Most people are not going to be anywhere close to that $10 million threshold, cap, but that is the cap on that. Then there are certain things you can spend the money on. If it's not listed, don't spend the money on that. But you can spend it on payroll costs, rent, utilities, mortgage interest, and then interest on other debts. You cannot spend it on the principal on your mortgage or principal on other debts. And for the rent, utilities, and mortgage interest, and I guess other debt, all of that has to have been in place before February 15th. So if you just signed a new lease, you're not going to be able to pay your rent on that with the PPP loan. They're just wanting to make sure that you can maintain where you were before the virus, got out of hand and really disrupted our environment. Next slide. Okay, most people who are seeking this do not want more debt. But the main draw to the PPP is the forgiveness aspect. So this amount that can be forgiven, so for the overall loan, you can spend it on payroll, rent, utilities, mortgage interest, and other interest. Funds that you spend on other debt interest are not forgivable. And so that's something that you might want to be aware of, and maybe you pay that out of your normal accounts. And only the funds spent on payroll costs, rent, utilities, and mortgage interest can be forgiven. Of that forgivable portion, 75% of that must be spent on payroll. The name of this is Paycheck Protection Program. they want to protect those paychecks. They want people on the payroll and being paid what they used to be paid, and want to make sure that this money really is going to those payroll costs. And you'll see that in the next two bullet points. There's some ways that your forgiveness could be reduced. So since the goal of this is really to keep everyone on the payroll, keep everyone paid, give that security to employees, and to yourself if you're self-employed. This is a really scary time. And I think pretty much every business has been hit to some degree. So what they want to do is make sure that you're staying fully staffed. So you can possibly have a reduction to your forgiveness if you have laid off employees. If you bring those employees back before June 30th, then you don't have the forgiveness being reduced. But the way that they evaluate this is they look at an average, your average full-time equivalent employee headcount, really looking at how many full-time employees you have, and then if you have part-time employees, you kind of add those up to see what would be full-time equivalent, and add all that together to see how many full-time equivalent employees you have. They compare those. There's two different time periods they look to, either February 15th to June 30th of 2019, or January 1st to February 29th of 2020. So some people, maybe your business last year is very much how your business is this year, and that's a good time period to look at. But maybe you had a lot of people employed last year, and things that kind of you didn't have as many people employed at the beginning of the year, and that's a better measure for you. You can use either period. It's the borrower's choice. Obviously, you want to use the one that has a lower full-time equivalent headcount. And so they're going to look at that against your full-time equivalent employee headcount. I normally say FTE instead of full-time equivalent, but they're going to look at your past average FTE headcount with your average FTE headcount during the 8-week period. If there has been a reduction, a lot of people have laid off staff, you just don't have the need for them, or you wanted them to be able to seek unemployment while you didn't have the need for them. If that's the case, there can be a reduction to your forgiveness for that. They look at it in a proportional reduction. So the way that I think about it is if you had 10 employees at the beginning of the year, 10 full-time employees, and then you had to lay 2 people off, and you have 8 full-time employees now, then that's going to reduce your forgiveness amount to 80%. So if you had a loan of, let's say $50,000, the forgiveness amount is going to be only $40,000. But you can cure that by bringing your FTE headcount up by June 30th. So if you bring it back up to where it was on February 15th, kind of odd, it looks at 2 snapshots in time. But if you bring it up to where it was on February 15th, by June 30th, then your forgiveness is not affected. We don't know. There's not been any sort of requirement about what you have to do after that. And it seems like it's really looking just at June 30th. It says before June 30th. So if you do it, June 15th, I would maintain that FTE headcount through June 30th. But we are still waiting on a lot of regulations and guidance on this forgiveness area. They've promised that, but haven't necessarily given us much guidance. So there's also a possible reduction to forgiveness if you have reduced employee wages by more than 25%. They're comparing that to what it is during the 8-week forgiveness period. from where it was in first quarter. Again, this is something that can be cured if you bring that back up by June 30th. So if you furloughed your employees and you're paying them less, maybe they're being paid 50%, as long as you get that back up by the 30th, you will not lose that, you'll not have that reduction in forgiveness. Now, I keep saying the 8-week window. That is the forgiveness period. And it starts on the day that your loan is funded. So the day that you receive the funds, the costs that are incurred and paid in the 8 weeks following that day are the ones that are eligible for forgiveness. So that's when you want to spend 75% on payroll. You want to pay your utilities with that money. You want to pay your rent with that money. That's when you want to do that. And you want to try to maximize that as much as you can. If you can work with your lender to get that to line up with your pay period, that would be great. Or work with your landlord, maybe write 2 checks for that month, one to cover the period that is covered by the 8 weeks, and maybe a check from your other accounts to pay the other portion. And the way that you apply for forgiveness, you're going to apply for that with your lender. We think that lenders are probably going to have their own forms and formatting on how they want these forgiveness materials submitted. But we do know what is going to be required. So they're going to want to see payroll records, including payroll taxes that you paid. You're going to want to see confirmation where you paid your utilities. If you can get some sort of acknowledgement from your landlord on your rent, or if you do that online, a printout of your confirmation, same for mortgage interest. And so hold on to all of that as you go through this process so that you can apply for forgiveness.
Sydney, Meredith, I just want to jump in real quick and let you guys know time-wise, we were going to be done by 6, and we wanted to allow 5 to 10 minutes of questions, and we do have several questions in our Q&A box. So just wanted to kind of give you a heads up on time.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, already touched on some of this. The only thing I hadn't mentioned was a transcript account. We are recommending that people put these funds in a new bank account just so that you can show those expenses really easily. If you have pay for some employees that's over the $100,000 mark, you could treat it kind of like a trust account and write a check from your PPP account to the account you normally make payroll out of, so that difference comes out of your normal payroll account. Same thing if you use a third party system for payroll.
So for most people, the thought of doing payroll is like nails on a chalkboard. Again, this is something you can do on your own. There's also ways of doing it cost effectively without hiring an accountant to do your payroll for you. Most banks offer this as a service. I will say it's not always cheap. I would definitely talk to the different banks and figure out which one works for you. I know Arvest works with Woman Run a lot, and I also know that they call it something odd. So that's why one reason why I wanted to bring out Arvest in particular. They call it treasury management and not payroll support. I mean, payroll's in there, obviously, on their website, but that's one thing. So these are things that are open for you to use and potentially, I mean, some of them are going to cost more than others, but you don't have to figure out all of the withholding information for your employees on your own. Oh, Sydney, you're muted.
Sorry about that. For amounts that are not forgiven, all PPP loans have the same terms. There's a 1% interest rate, so it's a very low interest rate loan. And there's a 6-month deferral period. Interest does accrue during that period, but you're not required to make a payment. And then a 2-year term. There are no prepayment penalties. So if you have the funds to go ahead and repay that loan, you can do that and will not be punished for that, which will keep your interest costs down. So if the PPP isn't for you, maybe you don't have that many employees, but you have a lot of other expenses. There are some other programs. The EIDL program that we mentioned at the beginning, you can get loans up to $2 million. The first 10,000 of which, and it's up to 10,000. I'm not really sure how the government makes the determination of what part counts as the emergency advance. But the emergency advance up to $10,000 does not have to be repaid. That works like a grant. But anything beyond that truly is a loan. And it's determined on the economic injury that you had. So you have to be able to show from your business records, here's where you lost income, or here's where you had an economic injury. And you can apply for both, for the EIDL and the PPP, but you cannot use them to cover the same expenses. And the EIDL can be refinanced into a PPP, and they'll consider that $10,000 kind of against your forgiveness amount. So you don't get to get that twice. The interest rates are listed here on the screen. There's one interest rate for small businesses and one for nonprofits. So there's some other options for relief. Both the EIDL and the PPP are through the SBA, but the SBA, if you have an existing loan with them, they will pay existing debt principal and interest for a specific time. So if you have an SBA loan, talk to them about that. That could be very beneficial. There are also some state programs, the Arkansas Bridge Loan Program, the Arkansas Quick Action Loan, and block grants. All of those are available through the Arkansas state government. And then we also have a couple of resources here for women-owned businesses that are targeted to you. And I would give those a look. There are some that are industry specific, but we've been trying to aggregate different resources that might be beneficial to you.
And some of those that are on there as well aren't just for women-owned businesses, but if they come up, we put them out as soon as we can. There is one that just went live this afternoon that we expect might actually run out of money by tomorrow. So if you have time tonight, I would certainly take a look at that. It's on the Woman Run Facebook page, and I'm sure that the Women's Foundation will probably put it out there as well.
Yes, and we actually, I was just going to quickly plug both Women Run, their social media and their website, because they're doing live updates on as we curate new opportunities for relief funding. Our social media, we're pushing out a lot on social media because it's changing so fast. We have some resources that are going to be available on our website, but social media is probably a better place to look because, as Meredith just said, funding goes out pretty quickly. In our last few minutes, we do have some questions. So let's kind of go through some of those. And I don't know if Meredith and Sydney, you guys can see the Q&A box?
I can see it.
I can see it.
You can just dedicate a couple minutes, or less to some of these. But also we're also going to be sharing the presentation. We're going to send that out, and we've recorded it. So we will be sending that out. But if you guys want to start going through those, that'd be great.
Sydney, these all look like they're for you.
Okay. Okay, what if you do not have but 2 employees for the PPP? If you have 2 employees, you can still seek the PPP. And your calculation is going to be based on your payroll for those 2 employees, but you can get their pay covered and also utilize some of that for rent, utilities, mortgage interest, and get that forgiven. So it's still worth seeking, even if you have 2 employees or if you're sole proprietor. Still worth seeking, in my opinion. Would an LLC with one member not taking a salary be eligible for PPP? Yes, that's going to be based on those net profits. It's going to be based on your 2019 net profits. If you have not done your 2019 tax return, you probably want to get that prepped so that you can figure out what your eligibility is going to be to get that number. Okay.
And they would want to file online for that, correct, and not actually mail in a filing?
You don't even have to have done your filing yet. You just have to be able to provide some backup of how you got to the number that you're going to be presenting. But it's not required that you've done the filing yet. Okay. I have 2 businesses. The first established in 2015 as an LLC. The second was a DBA that I just recently transitioned to an LLC. I have an EIN for the first business. Do I need to get a second EIN for the business just elevated to an LLC? I would recommend you to go ahead and get an EIN. It doesn't cost anything to get it. It doesn't cost anything to maintain it. But then you'll be ready. What is it? Get ready to be ready for whatever you need. A lot of banks are going to want you to have that or want you to be able to fill out a W-9, which is providing them with EIN.
And that would also allow you to keep those businesses separate. I would treat them like 2 different children. It's very important to keep businesses separated and removed from you as well.
Yes, maintains that liability that is the whole reason to do it in the first place. Okay, also with the second business, do I need to do the documents of organization as well, or will it work if I use original docs of organizations in the first business? She's the sole proprietor of both businesses and they show up on her Schedule C. For that, I still would document both, especially if those are really operating as 2 separate businesses, then I would get both organized separately. And you'll need articles for each, which is how you register with the state, but also your operating agreement, you're going to want 2 separate operating agreements, even if they are, carbon copy, essentially. You want it to be set up for each entity. And a lot of that is what Meredith was just talking about with keeping your liability separate. PPP payout. If I have a PPP that should equal a $20,000 payout, do I divide that $20,000 by 8 weeks? And do I need to show I pay myself each week for 8 weeks? You don't have to divide it by 8 weeks, but you want to spend all of it in 8 weeks. And if it's $20,000, then you're gonna want, what is 75% of that? 15,000. You want 15,000 of that to be spent on payroll. If less than 15,000 is spent on payroll, then your overall forgiveness is going to be reduced. And
the payroll too needs to reflect like what normal payroll would have been.
Yes, so you just make your payroll like you normally would. If you pay bi-weekly or semi-monthly, you're going to do that like you normally would. And so you're going to want to show that you did pay yourself, whether that's each week, every other week, twice a month, whatever. And you could do a short pay period on the front of it and the end of it if you want to really maximize that 8 weeks. It doesn't quite line up with your pay period. Okay. Um, this question about mortgage and utilities, if your business is in your home, we have not gotten guidance on that. And I don't feel comfortable giving you an answer just because we don't know. And I'm really sorry that we don't know, but we're hoping for more guidance on forgiveness.
Okay, so we only have time for about one more question, but we will look at the rest here in the Q&A. And Sydney or Matthew, you just want to scroll through real quick and pick out one that maybe we haven't covered or something that might be applicable to a larger group. Can you do that and just answer one more?
Yes. The question about can you add new employees for forgiveness? Yes. If you have lowered your FTE headcount, you do not have to rehire your same people to get that back up. You can hire new people. You can rehire your old people, but it can definitely be new people. So that's a quick one.
Okay, wonderful. So we had some other questions, and we'll kind of look at those and see if we can't maybe get um, something from Sydney Meredith just to kind of email back out to everybody. But we want to be cognizant of your time, so we just want to go ahead and close it up for today. But this is the first of what we hope will be future webinars that we're going to be hosting for women-owned businesses. Again, the Women's Foundation of Arkansas and Women run a project of Right Lindsay Jennings, like we're here to support you guys. We're here to create a community of women owned and women run because we believe in the power of women and we believe in the power of what women do for their community. And we're rooting for you guys. We know that it's really hard right now, but we are. And so please continue to follow us on social media. Um, Pay attention to updates about resources. Again, there's so much happening. But in the future, we want to make sure that women have great information and have an opportunity to ask questions. And we just cannot thank you guys enough for all that y'all are doing to stay afloat, support your families and your communities. And with that, we just want to say thank you and good night. And be on the lookout for more information from both of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.